Even though you've been raised as a human being, you are not one of them. They can be a great people, Kal-El. They wish to be. They only lack the light to show the way. For this reason, above all, their capacity for good. I have sent them you, my only son.
Silver Screen Superman. This is Silver Screen Superman. I'll watch every feature that's starring that creature from the planet Krypton, even the one with John Cryer.
Da 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 doopity doopity doo doopity doo. Check one. Check. Mic check one. Is this thing still working? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Geek Mentality presents Silver Screen Superman. If you are discovering this part of Geek Mentality for the first time, I don't blame you. I haven't done an episode of Silver Screen Superman in 3 years. If you go to fansnotexperts.com/Superman right now, you'll see that before this episode, the last episode that I did was for Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, back in February of 2022. And before that, it was Supergirl in July of 2021. I was on a good streak for a little while, and I don't know what happened. I went through the first 4 Christopher Reeve movies. I even did the Superman and the Mole Men movies. I did the Supergirl movie. Oh, I shouldn't say I did the Mole Man, the first 3 Christopher Reeve, Supergirl, and then I don't know what happened. And then I said, I need to finish this. And I went back and watched Superman 4, talked about that, and here we are. And it is a big week in the world of Superman, which means for this nerd, it is a big week in the world of Mike. This Friday, July 11th, my wife and I are going to see the 2025 brand new Superman. I think the movie starts around 4 o'clock. And I was like, I need to do an episode of Geek Mentality. I'm not waiting for movie month. I need to do an episode of Geek Mentality for this movie. But then I thought, wait a second, Michael, you already have a Superman podcast within Geek Mentality. We need to catch up. we need to get things right. And that starts tonight, right now, with Superman Returns from 2006. The plan is to give you a Superman podcast every day this week leading up to Friday, and it all culminates with the 2025 Superman movie. At a certain point, I need to hide from social media because I don't want to be influenced. I don't want to see any awesomely positive reviews, and I certainly don't want to see any sad negative reviews. So I am going to do my best to ignore the world and just focus on Superman. It already started. Even though I've done these movies as a podcast in the past, I said, Mike, you need to start watching these movies again. So over the weekend, I started Superman, Superman 2. To yesterday, it was Superman 3. This morning, I watched Superman 4. And this evening, I watched Superman Returns. I skipped Supergirl. I'm not going back to do that. Now, originally, the idea was to watch every version of Superman on the big screen. So I needed to watch the Donner cut. I've never seen the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2. I was then going to watch the movie where Hollywoodland, where Ben Affleck plays George Reeves. I was going to do that. And then, of course, you get to the Zack Snyder era, which I guess would have ended with Black Adam. I'm not going that crazy. I'm doing the big ones with Superman as an actual, character in the movies. So there will be. I'm done with the kind of the Richard Donner era, because this really, for lack of a better, way to describe it, this really felt like a Superman 5. It's a weird thing because it wants to be Superman 5 and yet it wants to be its own thing, and I don't know if that's part of the downfall of things. But starting tomorrow, we're rewatching Man of Steel, which I have not watched in years. I went to see it in the theater with coworkers, and that was one of the first podcasts that I ever did for Geek Mentality. In fact, when I post tomorrow's show, I should have a link back to that old original, which I think I recorded as I was walking back from the movie theater to my office in Boston. My God, 12 years ago, which is crazy. The thing about Superman Returns, and I just watched it, and I'm not going to pull up data. I'm not going to pull up facts. I'm not going to look up statistics. I just want to talk about what I just watched and kind of where I've come from with this movie, because it's a weird thing what this movie means to me in my Superman kind of love. And it's crazy that this movie is almost 20 years old. This came out in 2006. And, next year will be its 20th anniversary, which is crazy. So in 2005, my wife and I moved to Florida. And we made it almost a whole year before we said, let's go back to Massachusetts. But while in Florida, Superman Returns came out. I never saw it in the theater. I remember asking one guy who's my wife's cousin's husband. I remember kind of bringing it up, and he wasn't interested, and my wife wasn't interested. And I think at that time I wasn't keen on going to a movie alone. Now I downright love it, even though I'm not seeing Superman alone. So I didn't see it in the theater. But what I did start doing when I was in Florida was finally watching Smallville. And as I started getting into Smallville, I started feeling like, I think I love Superman. I think I love the lore. I think I love the character, what he stands for, the kind of choices he made, that to always, try to do the best and do the right thing. And I loved the way that Smallville kind of borrowed from, the Donner movie. That's what I'm calling it, the Donner era of Superman, the Christopher Reeve era, really. And I love that it borrowed from that. It kind of was influenced by that in certain things. Christopher Reeve was on Smallville, and it got me really into Superman, the character. And then I believe we'd moved home already, and we were staying with friends early on, and I rented Superman Returns. I was like, finally, I'm going to watch it. I feel like I watched it on my friend's big screen TV. And when I say big screen TV, I mean those square TVs. The HD wasn't like a regular thing in people's houses yet. So I think I rented it on DVD, and maybe we were babysitting his kids, because I was in the living room alone in their house, and I put this movie on, and I remember the opening which was just, right out of, 1978, the music. You've got the Marlon Brando narration, and then right into the Superman theme. And I was like, oh my God. And I realized that the music has a lot to do with it too, and how the emotional feeling that it's like, that not even, I mean, yes, of course, the main theme, but that, that, oh my God, I love it. Smallville used it once for the finale, commercial for the finale. I think I watched that like 100 times on YouTube. So it's funny that, my gateway into Superman is still the Christopher Reeve movies, but my real kind of like, wait a second, I'm a Superman guy. I grew up kind of a Batman guy. I was like, no, I want to buy a Superman shirt. And now I think, is that all I own? I mean, I know I own other shirts begrudgingly, but it kind of really started it for me. And it's funny that it started with Smallville and kind of with Superman Returns as well. That being said, this movie is not a perfect movie. It is a flawed movie. There is certainly things in it that I do enjoy. And there are certain things that I go, this didn't work for me. And I think one of those things as I watched it this time, which it's been years since I watched it, was that it's trying to, have its cake and eat it too. Is that the saying? Where it's trying to be like, hey, we're just like we're part of that original thing, but not really. Because everyone, of course, would be older by then. But like here we have Ma Kent's still alive, so that can't be Superman 5. It's a different. Obviously, we have different actors playing all the characters, but then in the Kent house, like there's a photo of the dad, and it's the dad from the '78 movie. So that's where I was like, oh, so it's saying that like Glenn Ford is the dad, because I definitely saw a picture of him, and we get to talk about like I Spent the Night with Superman, which is an article that Margot Kidder's Lois Lane wrote. So it's trying to connect it, of course, with the music, but it just like that. I think I love, but it also was trying to be its own thing. So I felt like that might have bothered some people. I don't know if it. I'm saying, I'm like, did it bother me? No, but I was like, wait a second, are we doing this and we're doing that? And maybe I think it wasn't as successful as I wanted it to be. I also wasn't a fan, or at least looking back now, I'm not a fan of the suit and the muted colors in the suit. I do like the texture. I do like that. But of course, if it's a different suit, how can it be the same Christopher Reeve? But I guess it's like, no, this is the 2000s. Everything's gritty. Everything's got to be darker. Batman, Batman Begins, Superman Returns. Remember when they showed up on the MTV Movie Awards and it made it seem like they would be together in a movie? The characters eventually get there, but it's not them. And it's funny when I watched this, and I was like, oh my God, 2006. This is before everything, right? We already had Ang Lee's Hulk out there, but this is before, like, this isn't a universe. This isn't we're beginning something. Or maybe I think they thought they were beginning something, but the thought of a cinematic universe was probably never, or at least, never widely discussed. And then just 2 years later, Iron Man comes out, and people are like, who? What is it? What is the Iron Man? Robert Downey Jr.? And then, of course, it just takes off from there. And DC has been trying to play catch up ever since. When this movie ended, I thought, it's a shame that they never got a second chance. Say what you want about the Snyderverse. He got multiple chances with Superman and with Batman, and with Wonder Woman to create this world. And Brandon Routh was one and done as Superman on the big screen. It wasn't until years later that he got to play a version of Superman on the small screen in the Arrowverse, which I thought was so cool. And that's the thing also. I watched this movie and I was like, oh yeah, he was pretty good. Looking back now, he was great. I actually thought Brandon Routh as Superman, pretty good. As Clark Kent, great. He was, again, kind of doing the Christopher Reeve thing. But I fell in love with him on the small screen, in the Arrowverse, on the Legends of Tomorrow. That's where I was like, oh, this guy is like awesome and cool and charming. And that's, you kind of feel like when I'm watching this, I'm going, I wish he had a second chance. I didn't love all the things Superman did. Sometimes just creeping around outside windows or just looking through houses. I want to see what Lois is doing. I will creep into her house, and hopefully, everyone is decent. I'll just show up in I guess technically my son's room, but it's not my house. So I'd be like, a divorced dad showing up. I'm going to watch you sleep. I love you, son. And then creeping out of the house later, because that's pretty much what happened. So, and Lois is with another man, Superman. So maybe. And that other man, he's a great guy too. Okay, James Marsden. You can't root against him. You don't root against him. Jawline for jawline. You guys be putting up a good fight against each other. But there was never another chance. I read that there was going to be a sequel with most of the people, coming back, but it just never happened. And then 7 years later, we get a brand new Superman. And it's like, okay. And then that is 12 years ago. So Superman, the Henry Cavill Superman, he started in 2013. He ended, I guess technically he ended it with Black Adam because he was like, I'm back. Oh, wait, no, I'm not. Which is in the 2020s. I don't think... Is that a solid 10 years as 2022? So almost 10 years as being Superman before it all went away. But yeah, at least he had a chance. Brandon Routh had no chance. Any chances of a Superman Returns sequel was canceled. And I think maybe it also has to do with maybe the fact that the director got canceled. One of the actors got canceled. One of the other actors somewhat canceled. So looking at this, like reading the credits, I'm like, oh yeah, him. Oh yeah, oh boy. So of course this movie is famously directed by Mr. Bryan Singer, who loves Spacey, obviously. They work together starting back with Usual Suspects. And Bryan Singer started with that. Then he made it really big with the X-Men movies. Then he does Superman. And then he did like other X-Men movies. Then the last thing I think Bryan Singer worked on was the friggin' Freddie Mercury movie, right? And he left that in the middle of it, I believe. So he's considered. Is he considered the director on that? He is still considered the director, but there's reports that like that's only like union version, like someone else came in and really finished all the directing. But and I forget who that was, and it was someone well known who did that as well. Like I think he was an actor slash director. I could be wrong, but I think so. But that is the last thing. That's from 2018. Okay. The last thing that he directed was quote unquote Bohemian Rhapsody. The last thing he produced was a TV show called The Gifted, which started before Bohemian Rhapsody. And he's out. I think, there were accusations. I don't know if there were ever charges of just him being a creepy deepy. I guess he's not a director of, if it was a director of photography, they'd be a creepy deepy. He's a creepy creep. He's just a freaking creep. Then you got Spacey, who's had his own issues, who's sort of been canceled, but then he's sort of kind of trying to come back. I don't know. It's very strange. And you know what? And I hate to say this, but it's like, he's such a good actor. How come he has to be a creep? It's like, that's the important thing. Like, oh man, I wish he wasn't a creep so that he could still be acting. No. You don't want him to be a creep because of the things he's done to people. That's really what it comes down to. That's the real thing. But he's kind of great in this movie. He's a little bit Gene Hackman, a little bit just kind of his own like flamboyant, cocky genius Lex Luthor, and he is pretty great in this. I hate to say it. I don't want to say it. And then you got Frank Langella. Now you might say, wait, what happened? What's with Frank Langella? Well, he was, the last thing I saw was that he was in that, was it the Fall of the House of Usher Netflix show? The Mike, oh my God, I can't think of his name, but you know what I'm talking about. The Netflix horror show that was directed and created by Mike Flanagan. And then the way he acted towards someone, inappropriate on set, something along those lines. Next thing you know, he's gone, and another actor, was it Tim Matheson? Is that who it was? Comes in and plays the role, the patriarch of the Usher family. And that's the last thing I've heard about him. I could be wrong. He could be acting, doing things. I don't know. But it's just when I see Bryan Singer, Kevin Spacey, Frank Langella, it's like, ooh, wee. And, thank God they only made one of these sometimes. But then you see Brandon Routh and James Marsden. You're like, oh, I wish these guys got another chance. And what's her name? As Lois Lane, who I thought the actress who played Lois Lane, she was fine. Like, she was good. Kate Bosworth. I can't believe I had to look it up. Kate Bosworth, not like, I feel like with Margot Kidder, there was this almost like troublemaker aspect that you get, that you like, you don't get from Kate Bosworth. She's a little more no nonsense. I think it just felt like Margot Kidder was like, yeah, I'm a great reporter. I'll get in trouble. I don't care. But Kate Bosworth was okay. I thought Brandon Routh was great as Clark Kent, and he was totally fine as Superman, even though I didn't love his suit. And I thought the eyes were a little too digitally blue. I think I read that they gave him blue contacts, and then they well, I was going to say they blew him even more. They digitized it. But that was almost like, how could he not be Superman? I mean, he's like Christopher Reeve. It's weird because Christopher Reeve, maybe it's those big old glasses, but I feel like you actually are seeing it actually works, the disguise, and he kind of straightens up and that. And with Brandon Routh, not as much because it just looks like Brandon Routh. I don't know. That's just me. As said already, Spacey was great, and I hate to say it, but I kind of was. Parker Posey was great in this. She played Lex Luthor's like girlfriend, I guess. Jimmy Olsen, Sam Huntington, also great. Like a guy that I really like. I think Being Human was the show that I watched him in a lot. And again, Frank Langella, James Marsden, like a really good cast of people. Cal Penn, like that's Kumar, right? Or Harold. I think he's Kumar. And it's weird because I feel like I've seen him in roles and he's like really good at delivering lines, and was a Designated Survivor. He played like the press secretary. He could have done more in this. He was very I don't know if he had cut scenes. I have no idea. So at the beginning of this movie, I do kind of love that Lex Luthor has married some old woman, Gertrude, and just to get her to sign over everything to him. I thought that was kind of cool. And that was played by Noel Neill, who is the original Lois Lane, or one of the original Lois Lanes, going all the way back to, the original Superman back in the 40s. Wow, that is so cool. She was on The Adventures of Superman. She was in Superman in 1948, where, wait a second, Kirk Allen was Superman, and she was Lois Lane in that. So cool to have her in it, and she passed away in 2016, so she lived almost 100 years. Jeepers creepers. Now, the story. Okay, there's two stories there going on. I guess there's three. First of all, it's called Superman Returns. Now, in Batman, they did Batman Returns, okay? And all that meant was Batman's back. Batman's back. Batman 2, he returns. Cocoon the Return, yeah, okay, they came back. They were like, oh, we're going to go back, and you're never going to have to, get cold. You're never going to need to eat, and you're never going to get old. But they're like, we need to come back. And I forget why they came back, but they came back. But with Superman Returns, it wasn't just like, hey, we're back with Superman. It's like, no, we need to give you a reason why Superman returned. It's because he left. And that bugs the crap out of me. That Superman left for 5 years. And I guess there was a whole scene, or I've seen clips of this where he's looking through the rubble of Krypton. Nothing. We get a title card. The worst thing in storytelling is when they tell you but don't show you. And instead, it's like a title card. It's like, hey, Superman, his planet blew up, but some astronomers think they might have found it. So Superman went out looking for it. Okay, that's it. And then he shows up back in Smallville. He didn't find it, didn't find what he was looking for. And now Superman's back. He goes back to the Daily Planet. He's like, thanks for keeping my job, Chief. It's like, thanks, Clark. Where have you been for 5 years? Anyway, oh, look, Superman's back, too, at the exact same friggin' time. Wait a second. Clark's back? Superman's back? Nobody makes that connection. That bugged me. And it shouldn't bug me because they can't, because it's Superman. They can't make the connection, even though at one point they like James Marsden character and Kate Bosworth, Lois Lane, they were like, how tall is Clark? Nah, it can't be him. It was the same thing, I think, in The Dark Knight Rises. It's like, all of a sudden, Bruce Wayne makes an appearance, and now Batman's back. Nobody makes the connection. But I think they just should not have done this. But then that's how you get the Superman is like his son is, that's how we got the son. So when he leaves, he comes back. All of a sudden, Lois has a fiance and has a son, and they claim that the fiance is the dad. But we find out later the kid's got superpowers, even though the kryptonite didn't bother him. He's got superpowers. So nothing. We don't find anything out from there. You know, that could have been something explored in sequels, but we don't see that. We don't get that. But I just hated that Superman left, then comes back 5 years. You know, there should have been stories of all the terrible things that happened in the 5 years while Superman was gone, all the things he missed, all the deaths. You know, thankfully, Ma Kent was still alive because he was like, I just had to go see for myself. What'd you find? I didn't find nothing. It was a big waste of time. But I had to go see. Now, he should have done is like said, you know, Clark is remotely working and sending in his work, and somehow Superman, like he could have worked with Lois. He could have told her the truth and then figured out a way to still go off, I guess, because it takes 5 years or 2.5 years to get to Krypton and back. I don't know. It didn't seem all that necessary. Now, Superman has left in the comics. At least in one of the stories I read, his son, John Kent, took over as Superman while he left for a while. And he has to go off planet sometimes. That happens. But 5 years? That's crazy. And they welcome back, you know, with arms wide open. And that scene was pretty great, where he catches the plane and lands it and helps it, you know, to set it down in the middle of the baseball field. That was pretty great. Some of the effects have that, like, TV. I think, you know, maybe 6 years later, you see these digital effects on TV, which, you know, we're like, oh, that's pretty good for TV. And I'm seeing him in this movie where at some points he just looks like he's almost made of clay. That's the digital, like you're trying to make it look real and it just doesn't work. I'd rather have, you know, put Brandon Routh in front of a green screen. You can do better effects with that. And I think like James Gunn is doing a lot of that with, you know, literally putting him and having him but having him, you know, being shot and then composited in. Whereas this, you saw moments where it was completely a digital version of Superman, and it just, and I know this is 20 years ago, and it was probably spectacular at the time, but it didn't work. It just didn't look right to me. Then you have the story of him returning. Okay, we talked about that. The story of the son. We find out it's his son. Then you have the whole thing with Lex Luthor. Now, he's the main villain. He discovers that he needs to go to the Fortress of Solitude. He finds out about the crystals. And I had a thought. Were the crystals, and I don't know this. I feel like I should know this, but I don't. Like, I'm reading, at the same time, I've read a bunch of the old Action comics. I read stories here and there. But I'm like, did the crystals, were they invented for this movie, or are they crystals part of, because to me, crystals have always been part of Superman, but were they invented for 78 Superman? I don't even know. So this is another callback to that with the crystals. He discovers that that's how they built the Fortress of Solitude, and he has this idea to, I guess, mix it with kryptonite, because he found kryptonite in a mineral in a museum. All fun little scenes, and Spacey eats up chews up the scenery everywhere that he's in. And again, I hate giving him compliments, but here we are. So he combines the crystal with the kryptonite to make a giant, ugly piece of land that he says is going to take over all of the United States, or most of it, killing billions, but then he'll have, again, beachfront property to sell. I don't mind that, because that's kind of what Gene Hackman did, so it is a Lex Luthor type thing, but you know, I'd almost rather him trying to become the leader, trying to become the president. Those kind of things I think would be cool. Not do kind of the same thing, but this time with a more interesting aspect of it, like he's creating the land using Superman's powers, but it looks like crap. And I mean, it looks like a bizarro version of the Fortress of Solitude. Like, it looks all just dirty and gross, and it's got kryptonite infused through it, and that's where you see Superman having to fight through this and use every last ounce of strength to push this thing into space. I think at the time I was listening to a podcast about Smallville, and it's like, Superman, he should have not have been able to do that because of the kryptonite. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe, or it weakens him, it makes him sick, but he was so determined. When he was flying up and then flying back down, I was like, oh yes. Like he smashed through the core, and then you see him pulling that, the amount of exertion he's doing to move this, basically this landmass, this island. I kind of liked it, even though I was like, oh, this is like the whole thing. I don't think he throws a punch in this movie, they say. But I kind of liked his acting. I think maybe I'm just giving the credit to Brandon Routh there. So it's like, the main gist of the movie is that he pushes that away. He almost dies. He's not quite dead, and he nurses himself back to health. He gets there eventually. Lex escapes, but he ends up on an island with Parker Posey and some coconuts and some dogs. And they ran out of gas. So that reminded me of just kind of it didn't happen in any of the Gene Hackman movies. I mean, he ends up in prison, but it had that feeling. It just had that kind of same feeling. And then in the end, we kind of get almost the exact same flyover that Christopher Reeve, they did in all 4 of his movies at the end. He looks and smiles. I don't think Brandon Routh smiles. He just kind of looks. He's like, what's up? And then he flies off. And that's the end of Superman Returns. That's the end of Brandon Routh as Superman on the big screen. We do see him in like the Crisis on Infinite Earths. He plays is it the Infinite Superman? I forget which one it is. Either way, it was very cool, and he fought Tyler Hoechlin's Superman, which I don't care what anyone says. That Superman was excellent. Superman and Lois was an excellent television show. Yes, there was a lot of like teen drama going on at the same time. I don't care. That version of Clark, that version of Lois, effing-tastic. And I will say that. You know what? I liked Henry Cavill. I liked Amy Adams. But probably better than this. Not as good as Reeve and Kidder, obviously, and not as good as Bitsy. I was going to say Bitsy Russell, but I'm thinking Nipsey Russell, and Tyler Hoechlin, the actors from the Clark, Superman, and Lois. I never watched Clark and Lois, and it's Dean Cain's a guy that makes me not want to watch it, but part of me is like, it's part of Superman history. I should go back and watch it someday. But I loved Superman and Lois, and that ended so that the new Superman could live. I feel it was like, let's finish that off, and now we're moving it into a new world of DC. And it's already started. We had that Creature Commandos on HBO, which was way more enjoyable than I thought it deserved to be. And yet it also, there's a weird thing because we have Peacemaker, which bridges between the DC Snyderverse and the James Gunn version, the new DC Studios. And James Gunn's already dipped his toe there because he did the Suicide Squad too. So it's funny because I think the Blue Beetle is supposed to still stick around. Obviously Peacemaker, even though in Peacemaker we had allusions to the Snyder Justice League. I don't care. Let's just softly ignore that part and bring it into the 2025 new DC Studios world, which to me really starts on Friday. But we still have a few days to get there, and I want to relive the Snyderverse as much as I possibly can starting tomorrow. So look for another episode. I just finished doing a month-long episode of movies, so let's just do a week of movies. Why not? A week of Superman movies. I'm game if you are. So listen, you can find me on all the social medias because I'm done here. I think I'm done here. You'll find me on all the socials at Geek Mentality, except TikTok, which is Geek Mentality Mike. The Facebook page is Fans Not Experts. The YouTube channel is Fans Not Experts. That's because the website where everything that I work on can be found at fansnotexperts.com. And you can find every episode of Silver Screen Superman at fansnotexperts.com/Superman. I am very happy to be back doing this. Very happy that I decided to watch all these Superman movies, in these last few days and these next few days, because all it's doing is getting me in the super mood. Ooh, it's Happy Superman Week, everybody. I will talk to you tomorrow. But until then, thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. And here is my theme song. This is my podcast. I made it. Geek Mentality's what I named it. And I think you should listen and subscribe, 'cause I'm kinda funny and awesome. I think that I'm worth your time, and I'm kinda handsome. My mom says, please listen and please subscribe. At least listen to this episode.
Fans Not Experts.